Welcome to the Next Level Casino Careers Show, a series highlighting industry tips and insights from the best minds in the casino and hospitality industry. Enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Joining me today is Jim Michaelian. He is the CEO of the Acura Grand Prix out of Long Beach. Hi, Jim. Thanks for joining.
Good morning, Peter. It's a pleasure being with you. And yes, we just got through running a very successful event here last weekend at the Acura Grand Prix here in the downtown streets of Long Beach. In fact, we're in the process of cleaning up after the circus has left town, and that's sort of the downside of putting on a big event like this. Is our crews all have to go out and then remove everything that's out there. And literally, they have 20 days to do that, and then we give it back to the city as if nothing had happened here, and it'll remain like that until we commence the preparation for the 24 event, which will take place next April.
That's wonderful. I heard it was a big success, and I can't wait to hear all about it. For the listeners out there who are listening, Jim was there from the beginning in 1975 when the Grand Prix arrived in Long Beach. Jim, do you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what we like to call the creation story? Sort of, where did you begin, and how did that land you in that spot in 1975 when you began that journey to where you're at today?
Well, I guess if you go back to the beginning, I'm a Southern California kid. I was born here, raised here, went to school at UCLA with a bachelor's in physics and a master's in business administration, and had a couple of jobs in the auto industry. But I was living in the city of Long Beach back in 1975 when there was a gentleman named Chris Pook, who was a travel agent in this town. And quite frankly, Long Beach at that time was a Navy town, known primarily for the fact that it was a major berth for the Navy, and the port was a big function here in this city. But the Navy was phasing out, and the city was really looking to reimagine itself. New image, new look. Some people recall, excuse me, some people recall the Queen Mary had been acquired back in the late 60s and had been brought into port, but it never really achieved what the city was looking for, a dynamic new vision about where, it was headed. So Chris had the idea about putting on a motor race in the downtown streets of Long Beach, keeping in mind that Long Beach looked decidedly different than it does today. And motor racing in city streets had not been allowed since back in the 40s, when there were a couple of fatalities back in Watkins Glen, New York. So as a consequence of that, no city had been able to host these kinds of events. So when when Chris and I joined with him very soon after the origination of the idea. So when we went to the city, one of the real challenges was, how can you convince us, the city officials, that you can conduct this event in a safe and a effective manner so it reflects well on the city? So one of the challenges we had was to develop a whole safety system that could be constructed on a temporary basis, afford the opportunity to race cars down these streets, and have it done in a manner that they were convinced would be additive to the city's image and not detract from it because of whatever negative incidents that might occur. So that's what we did. We built the safety system. Quite frankly, we raised money from a lot of our friends and associates in order to afford the original capital outlay to make that happen. And then we ran our first event back in September of 1975. Just for those who aren't real familiar with racing, we were looking to run open wheel racing cars that are similar to what run now at the Indianapolis 500 and at other venues around the country. So we ran a test race in those days called the Formula 5000 race in September 75 with the intention of proving the viability of the circuit so that we could run a Formula One race in 1976. We were successful in doing that. And in fact, we began hosting the Formula One series here in 1976. Formula One is sort of the epitome, was then and is now, the epitome of what open wheel racing is all about. Highly skilled, technologically advanced, the fastest type of cars there is, open wheel cars. So we ran Formula One here in 1976 to 1983, 8 years. And after some initial financial and operational challenges, this event really turned around in 1977 when Mario Andretti captured the checkered flag and was our winner that year. And after that, the event just took off in terms of the visibility and the exposure and the viability of the event. We took on a major sponsor shortly thereafter in 1980. Toyota came on board, and this event became known as the Toyota Grand Prix, and it remained that way all the way up to 2018. One of the longest sponsorship relationships there has been in motorsports. But a major change occurred in 1984 when it became very expensive for us to bring all the teams and the cars and the personnel over to this country, because Formula One is an international series, runs all over the world. And as a consequence of that, you had to pay for the freight and all of the costs associated with assembling this group here in the United States. And so what we did was we switched over from being an international series to being a domestic series. And that domestic series was the IndyCar series. These are the cars that we're running at Indy. We began to run those here in Long Beach in 1984 and have continued doing so up until this last weekend. A little different format in terms of the technological aspect of the cars, but still open wheel cars driven by very competent drivers that go very fast, even though they're driving on city streets.
Well, thank you for sharing that. As you know, as you described, it's a Herculean effort to pull this off, especially when you have a city that's concerned about safety and some other logistical and infrastructure items. For those out there that maybe in their communities thinking maybe it's not a Grand Prix, but if they're thinking, how do I, maybe they have an idea for an event, a citywide event that is of this scale. Is there any tips that you would give to someone who's considering approaching their community leaders for consideration? Was there something you wish, if you could go back to 1975 and tell you and Chris, hey, you know what, we should probably do X, Y, and Z to make it more efficient, or any sort of tips for people out there trying to replicate something like this for their community?
Well, there are a number of factors to take into consideration. One is where the venue takes place, because that's really critical. One of the things you want to do is you want to invite people to your event, to your party, to your activity, and you have to give them the opportunity to come to a venue that is attractive, that people say, that's someplace I'd like to go. That sounds like fun. That sounds exciting. And that's the kind of thing that we as spectators want to participate in. So that's number one. Number two, you definitely need to have an alliance with the city fathers, officials, whoever's involved in that community. That's super important, because without their cooperative spirit, you're bound to run into all sorts of resistance from a number of either part of the city political elements or outside forces that can cause a great deal of difficulty. Third, you got to take into consideration when you're conducting an event, what's the impact on the community? Positive, negative. The positives are some of the obvious ones, right? Economic impact, bringing people into your into your particular venue, the contribution they make, the visibility you get. If you happen to have television that accompanies your event, so much better, so much more the better, because now the city or the venue has the opportunity to be exposed to literally thousands and in our case millions of additional individuals who are watching the event as opposed to attending themselves. So those are the benefits. Then the negative is obviously you need to have pre-event construction. There can be some kind of impact, negative impact on flow and visibility, et cetera. So you need to take that in consideration. You need to talk to those stakeholders. How can we minimize that? And what's the offsetting benefits that accrue to you, the stakeholders, so that they see that in the end it's a plus plus, not a minus minus. So those are the things that it takes to put the broad-based consensus together to say, you know what? Everything considered, this event is additive to the experience of this particular venue or city or wherever it is. And if you can get to that point, then you stand a good chance of not only conducting the event, but of having a repetitive nature to it in years to come. Because once you run the event, you're going to go through the same cycle that the introduction of a product is that you begin to refine it. You begin to see how you can enhance it. You begin to react to people who have comments and suggestions and ideas. And as a result of that, the event becomes much more effective in terms of what it's trying to accomplish and less impactful negatively on the community in which it's being conducted.
I love what you said there, Jim, about adapting and refining. And if I could just tug on that for a moment. Since 1975, the media landscape has changed dramatically. You know, back then it was live broadcasts and maybe a few stations would carry, highlights of events like that. Then in the 80s, you had cable television, and all of the explosion of channels started happening, where you had channels that covered specific sports and events. And then here comes the internet age in the 90s and the 2000s. And now today, with social media and all of the different streaming platforms out there, my question is, how have you adapted your event along the way and over time, so that as the media landscape rapidly changed, you were able to take advantage of this? What sort of refinements have you done and implemented to make the event the success it is today?
Well, Peter, we've evolved along many of the lines that you have you indicated here. Okay, yes, when we started out, our first broadcast of the race was on CBS television. It happened to be a week delayed, but that very race in 1975 was broadcast around the country and literally picked up internationally. Around the world. And certainly when we went to Formula One, that was the key distributing entity in terms of visibility around the event. As we've gone along, a couple of things have taken place. As you mentioned, there have been dedicated channels now to sports, okay? So what happened was, while your main event might be on network television, some of the subsidiary events, the secondary events, what we used to do in terms of running what we do now in sports cars or drifting or other kinds of activities that comprise the whole weekend schedule, they show up on all the different mediums that are available now. Okay. So what you have is you have cable television coverage. Now you have streaming and the audience that's attracted to that particular form of media, and also distribution. Used to be, the traditional ways, photographers would come and we'd have over 600 credentialed media personnel here, all doing basically the same kind of a function. Now we have almost the same number, but there's a myriad of different outlets that they use, depending on what their format is, what their audience is looking to assimilate, and how they convey that information. So while the coverage and the exposure is similar, the means in which it's delivered to the audience and the expansion of that audience has changed dramatically, and to our benefit, because when you start looking at the cume of all of those individuals who are impacted by the message that's emanating from the event, it has now grown in large proportions to what it used to be.
Yeah, speaking of growing, what does it take to pull something like this off? Is there I'm sure there are a lot of part-time team members that you depend on, to execute the race, but is there a full-time team that also is working on, I'm sure you'd probably take a few days off or maybe a few weeks off, but then you're thinking about next year already, right? What does that look like?
So you're absolutely correct. Literally, as we sit here now, we have a planned huge review meeting that we always take place literally a week after the race is over, and then we plunge right into the planning for the 2024 race. But we have a very small but very seasoned staff here, 13 people in the traditional roles, marketing, finance, PR, and then we have an operational crew of 5, including those in that 13 are 5 people who are full-time operation staff. And what we do, Peter, is not only do we plan and execute around the Acura Grand Prix as an annual event, but because over the last 47 years, now it's 48, having just completed this event, we've acquired a significant inventory of assets. Okay, grandstands, bridges, circuit systems, tire pallets, hospitality suites, all of which have an application to other similar types of special events other than just what we conduct here on an annual basis in Long Beach. So what our operations department is actively involved in is looking at opportunities to utilize those assets at other venues. For example, we do a lot of work with the AVP volleyball tournament to build grandstand seating at their locations in and around the Western United States. We're going to be heading up to Las Vegas soon for the huge EDC concert that takes place up at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And we'll build a lot of staging there as opposed to grandstands because they don't need any, obviously being at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We do a lot of work with the Academy Awards every year in Hollywood, building structures for them. So this is a chance for us to utilize the millions of dollars worth of assets that we've acquired and deploy them in various ways to generate revenue during the off season, which is obviously very valuable to us. In the meantime, our staff here we very rigorously review where we're at. Even though we've done this for, obviously for 48 years, we constantly look for ways in which we can increase it. And the fact that we're at our 48th year means that the 50th is not too far away by definition, right? So this last year, we instituted a 3-year plan going into the 48th race this year, a 3-year plan to get us to where we want to be when we celebrate our 50th event here in 2025. So it began with a lot of the changes in terms of the presentation and the look and the focus of what the event is all about. This year, we adopted the cut line of Southern California's 200-mile-an-hour beach party, and we carried that theme literally through a lot of the hospitality and other presentational elements here at the circuit. So when people came, it had a beachy type theme to it, and we want to continue that concept as we matriculate towards 2025.
You know, as a former marketer, I'm really loving that 200 miles per hour beach party tagline. I love it. That's such a great tagline. That's so creative. And it fits. It fits your event. It fits the venue and the location. It's awesome.
Yeah, and quite frankly, it gives us a springboard to evolve in a number of different directions using that as, you know, the primary base. And then we can utilize various techniques to constantly display that thematically throughout the venue as we move forward. So it was something that we worked on, and we want, and quite frankly, we trademarked it, it's registered, it's ours, and we're going to take advantage of that. And you know, we're Southern California people. Most of our audience comes from the Western United States, and so weather is really one of the keys to making events like ours successful. It's hard. Talk about a 200-mile-an-hour beach party if everybody's huddled up in their coats and jackets, and you know it's 50 degrees out, and it's hard to be looking like you're having a great time. And we were blessed this year with 3 days of almost perfect weather. Sun was shining, people came out, and our approach has been from the beginning, but even more so in the last 10 or 15 years, is to try to create an event that has the maximum amount of appeal to as diverse an audience as possible. And we've gone a long ways in that direction. Our demographics, the age, the ethnicity, the young people that attend here, all have been very adoptive of what we have tried to present. So, how does it reflect itself? In a number of ways. What events do we have here? We have Indy cars, open wheel cars that people like, headliner event, but we also have sports cars here, a different day, different race. Why sports cars? Because sports cars in Southern California carry a special significance, right? Aspirational. I love to see a Ferrari. I love to see a Porsche. I love to see a Corvette, a BMW race. I probably can't afford it, but I'd love to someday. And in the meantime, have at it on the streets. Sports cars. We put Robbie Gordon's trucks flying through the air and over their jumps. Everybody loves it, universally loves it. It's dramatic, it's exciting. We have drifting. Drifting has a very strong attraction to our Hispanic fans and our Asian American fans and everybody. And so we put that on at night, on Friday and Saturday night. And then as another component, we put on a historic race here. And this year we had historic Formula One cars here, which to a lot of the old timers was a great renewal of what they experienced when they were here back in 76 to 83. And for the others, most people here, it was a revelation. It was like, wow, you know, those cars and the sound and the look, totally different. You're not going to see them often, but it was something to experience. So you can sort of see how it's a composite of events that's supposed to have the max amount of attraction. Same thing applies to our off-track activities. We put on concerts. We put a concert on Friday night that featured a Hispanic DJ. First time we'd done that. And it turned out very successful. On Friday night, we had a rock and roll. Saturday night, we had a rock and roll concert with Kings of Chaos. Attracts a different group of demographics. But the whole idea is, what can we do to provide an entertainment vehicle for the whole family, the whole group that comes, so that there's something in there that's attractive to anybody and everybody. So in the end, last Sunday night, when people were leaving the venue, we always say, you know, if you get a thumbs up and a, hey, we really had a good time, there's a really good chance we're going to be able to bring those people back in 2024, 2025, and years beyond. And that's when you talk about the planning process, that's what we're constantly looking to do, into how the future events can be even more appealing in terms of their composition and their presentation, so that everybody still comes and says, you know what, this event hasn't gotten old. This event has gotten new and continues to be refreshed.
That's a great point. And I think it would be a great time to talk about our new segment called The Bigger Picture, where we put a picture on the screen, we get a reaction to it, and we'll converse from there. And I think what we've been talking about would lead perfectly into this. So let's see if we can get that picture up on the screen. Let's see. There it is. And the headline, for those who can't see the screen or listening, the headline is "Streets Are Sweet for the 2023 Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach as attendance records topple." More than 192,000 people swarmed downtown Long Beach to enjoy the 3-day racing spectacle from April 14th through the 16th. Jim, can we get your reaction to this headline and sort of that statistic?
Absolutely. You know, we talked about the conditions here, the 3 days of perfect weather and exciting racing. What you're looking at there is Victory Circle for the Indy cars on Sunday afternoon. And yes, we had a record attendance here in terms of the events that have taken place since 2009, when there was a reunification of IndyCar. And we had 192,000 plus here. And we sold out all the grandstands on Sunday. And there's a tremendous amount of general admission ticket holders that attend the event, especially the younger audience, because they really, quite frankly, don't really want to sit in seats for 2 hours, but love walking around, taking pictures, feeding social media. And we provide them with the opportunity to do that in a number of different areas. So this was the culmination, of the weekend. And what you're seeing here is 3 individuals who have finished the race, first, second, and third. And Kyle Kirkwood, who is in the center of that picture, won his very first race here in IndyCar and is celebrating here. Kyle Kirkwood drives for Michael Andretti, obviously a famous name in racing. Michael Andretti won his first race here back in 1986. And his dad, Mario Andretti, won here 4 times. So the Andretti name is emblazoned all over Long Beach and the Long Beach circuit. And now Kyle Kirkwood, who drives for Michael, has won his first race here too. So there was a lot of symbolism there and obviously a lot of enjoyment. But the most important thing was it was a safe race. It was an exciting race. And the people that watched it, I think, generally were entertained.
Yeah, that's exciting. And it's one of the reasons why we decided to partner with you this year and become a major sponsor of the race. For those out there that experienced it, or maybe are reading about it, watching the highlights, I'm sure they're getting that same energy and adrenaline rush that you've been talking about here since we started the show. And they're probably wondering, if there's probably people out there wondering themselves, how can I get involved professionally? Are there careers in this sport? Because it seems to be catching fire right now, just really expanding and growing tremendously over the last few years. What would you have to say to someone out there that's considering this and maybe curious about, a career in this industry? What would you have to say for them?
Well, first thing is the event business is unique. It's different. It's not, pardon the expression, mundane, 8 to 5, 5 days a week. I get my weekends off. So to start with, and Peter, it's no different than what you realize at your facility. You need to have a passion for this. You want to be involved. You want to seek ways in which you can not only utilize the skills you have, but enhance them so there's an application into the future in terms of growth, not only individually, but the benefits that accrue to the organization. So the first thing I always suggest to people is have a passion, have a real desire to be involved in whatever you do, whatever it is, do it to the utmost, because without it, it shows. As a CEO, I look at our people, and I know, after all these years and having had people come through the organization, the ones that stay are the ones that love what they do. Hard work, long hours, challenges, absolutely. If you don't want to put in some long hours, this isn't the business for you. But if you do, there's a tremendous level of satisfaction that emanates from having, one, done your job correctly, efficiently, and more importantly, teaming with the whole organization to achieve whatever those goals and objectives are. Because in the end, that's what really counts. You get to look and see and feel what's been accomplished and share that enthusiasm and that energy with your colleagues and all the people that you're working with. And I can tell you, there's a real sense of accomplishment that comes from it. I've had the advantage of doing this for 48 years. A lot of people say, why do you keep doing it? That's one of the key reasons why, I keep doing it, and our organization keeps doing it, because the people that come, the people that are impacted by the event in a positive way, give you a great deal of stimulation with regard to how you achieve the success you do, and more importantly, how that gives you the adrenaline to be able to continue on doing these events year after year after year. So the first step, love what you do. Second thing is get involved whatever level you can. Sometimes people want to say, well, I want to start at X level or Y level. Find out what's available and plunge in. Get involved, show your skill set, show your energy, show your enthusiasm. Believe me, at the top, when you're looking down and seeing how things are going, those are the people that stand out, because they're the ones that will volunteer for the little extra things, or I can do this, or let me solve that, or do you need a hand with this? And it makes a very positive impression, no matter who your superior is. And that, I think, can only lead to positive consequences, down the road.
You bring up some very good points here, and one of the reasons why we felt that a partnership with the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach was going to be so important for us in our sponsorship portfolio is that it's more than just a sponsorship, it's a partnership. And a lot of what you've described here over the last 30 minutes of your passion for putting on a great event and ensuring that people are safe, ensuring people have a good time, and that it benefits the community, that there are more positives than negatives. It really aligns well with how we view our business. And when we look for partners, that's really important for us, is to how do we match up not only through business, but also through the community and shared values. So it's really been a pleasure to hear that the way you approach your recruiting and building your team is very similar to how we do it here as well. And I think having a passion for what you do is really if someone can find that, I think that's there's a lot of reward in that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And Peter, we have 34 sponsor partners here. Well, obviously Acura is the title sponsor, but every one of those 34, including Alava, which came on board this year, is key to our success, because not only do we have a relationship as a sponsor, but it's really more as a partner, because all of the activity, the pre-race engagement, what they do in terms of activation, what they do at the event itself, how they utilize it, how we can work together to achieve the goals and objectives that our partners are looking for, is key. Because some of our partners have been here for 20, 25, 30 years. And those kind of relationships don't last for very long unless there's a high level of satisfaction on the part of both parties. And our marketing department is so adept at being able to ferret out what is it you as our sponsor partners want to achieve, and how can we help make that happen. because when the race is going on and you're trying to, you're entertaining clients or you're using various programs for incentivizing people or vendors or whatever it might be, or if it's just for the exposure that the partner gets from the visibility at the track, that, as I mentioned before, the television audience, not only national but international. We had 9 hours of television coverage of this event. Over 2 million people viewed this event and all the company commercial aspects of it. So those are all the factors that we take into consideration when we signed agreements with people. We're not looking for 1-year deals, even 2-year deals. We're looking for 3 and more, because many times it takes that long to refine the process so that everybody looks up and says, wow, I came the first year, we sort of dipped our toe, we saw what could take place. Second year you start, we'll sit to refine where you are. Third year, you're going, wow, you know what? We're starting to maximize what we're getting out of this, and now we can grow that. That, quite frankly, that's where we are with your organization. We all both took the first step, and now we're looking to see what we can do about expanding on it. And you've had a taste of what transpires here. We've had a look at how things went, and now we can have the luxury of sitting down and saying, okay, with that as a backdrop, now how do we really make this thing work for everybody? And that's the key to these long-term relationships that we have.
Yeah, I love it. I love your passion for what you do, Jim. And for someone to have that sort of longevity with what you love to do, there has to be a balance, right? So may I ask you what your passion is when you're not at work? How do you stay balanced? How do you kind of reset and recharge?
Well, I guess maybe it isn't so surprising that not only do I have a passion for organizing events, but I was led to this originally back in '75 because I've always loved racing. I mean, it's something I have followed closely, wished I could do when I was younger because I didn't have the financial resources to make it work. But I got involved in running races, which was, I guess, as close as you could get to being involved in the racing activity. And then as I got older, accumulated a little bit of resources, why I was able to put into effect a racing program for myself. And so for the last 30 years or so, I've been racing on a national and also an international level, not only in the United States, but in a lot of the venues around Europe and in the Middle East. Still do, actually. Have the opportunity to go out and run mostly sports cars, Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Porsches. And so that sort of feeds my passion to do something when I'm not involved doing working here at the Grand Prix, and I find that very satisfying. And Peter, to the extent I talked about engagement and how much as an individual you want to really immerse yourself in your work occupation, all those things help because I can carry a lot of the experiences I have as a driver, with racing teams, into the discussions about how we're going to facilitate and organize the event itself, because I can look at it from both sides. I can look at it as an organizer, here's what we want to do, but I can also look at it from the participant standpoint of what it takes to make that an effective activity for them. And I think there's a benefit that accrues to that. So not only am I going out and racing, but I like to at least justify it that there's some benefit that accrues back to the organization of the company.
Well, I love it. I love it. Your passion for what you do in the sport really is, I can feel it through the screen. Earlier you spoke about your education, and you got your bachelor's degree and your master's from UCLA. I'm actually currently attending UCLA, so we're both fellow Bruins. And my question is, how engaged are you with the school today? And do you interact with alumni, and sort of what's the platform there for engaging with current or former Bruins? Is that something that you do?
I have been invited to come back to the Anderson, Graduate School of Business, which is where I got my MBA, and given some lectures in the past. I have not had the time nor the opportunity to do that on a more recent basis, but I can tell you that even back in those days, and I'm talking about in the 60s, I was very proud to have graduated from UCLA with my MBA. Just as an aside, I got my bachelor's there in physics, but had no interest in pursuing a career in that particular field. But it speaks to this whole matter of determining in your own mind what it is you want to do, or what you're interested in, or what you want to be engaged in. And I knew soon after graduating, well, actually while I was in my formative years at UCLA, that I had no intention of pursuing a degree in physics or a field in physics once I got my degree. And that's the reason I switched over and went to business. And I think that obviously that was not only the proper choice, but it afforded me the opportunity to get a much broader feel for what the business endeavor is all about, and that's obviously helped me, because when they're running a company like this isn't just all about racing; it's about running an enterprise, and you have to be cognizant of all the various aspects: insurance and financials and PR and marketing and the operational aspect of it, and also a big component, Peter, is all the volunteers that help to make this work. You can't put on one of these events with 13 people, obviously, right? We have over 2,000 volunteers who come in and perform different duties, whether it's the Cow Club, which is responsible for the flagging and the marshaling at the actual race circuit itself, or the volunteers in the community who come out and assist with regard to information flow and interaction with our customers, or run the press room, or do a variety of different tasks. You need those people to not only be engaged in what they do, but to put a positive image forth about the event and about the city in which this event takes place. And that's really critical, because our customers come back on a year after year after year. And hopefully one of the reasons is because they feel a very welcome atmosphere here. And that's really critical to us. We want people to come, enjoy themselves. And keep in mind, we talk about 1975. When we started here, we instituted a policy of children 12 and under are free admission. That's been in place for the last 48 years. And you know the result of that, Peter? What's happened is I constantly being stopped by people saying, my dad brought me here, and now I'm standing here with my son or my daughter. And so that's 3 generations of people who have come and enjoyed this event. And we think that's a great sales tool for engaging with people on an ongoing basis.
I love it. You're thinking long term. You're playing the long game. It's not just about now, but it's also how do we preserve and grow and adapt into the future. And that's just a wonderful way to approach something like this, and I think commendable and admirable. So along those lines, let's think 7 years into the future. It's 2030. What would you say? Look, if in 2030. What will be the thing that we will say about 2023 that we underestimated the most? Or maybe, what do you think?
So I think there's a couple of things here. One is, it took a while for society and in general, and obviously Southern California in particular, to emerge from the pandemic. We actually were canceled here as an event in 2020. We were literally 70 days away from running an event, had the course all set up and ready to go. And March the 14th, 2020, the door shut, everything closed, and we were basically out of business in terms of running an event. We reconstituted ourselves. What we did was in 21, we actually scheduled the race in September, which was, we had never done those before except for the very first one, because we've always been a spring event. So we ran a race in September of 21, and then we came right back in 6 months and we ran our traditional date in April of 22. Just and a lot, and during those times we still had a lot of protocols in place and a lot of procedures, and there was, some hesitancy on the part of people to come out. How engaged could they be? What were other people going to be doing in terms of a protective way? So I think 23, and many of the numbers that we talked about and the engagement of people is a reflection of the fact that people have sort of got to the point where they realize that life is going to go on. Yes, there's going to be some challenges intermittently. We need to make provisions for those and accommodations, but we're going. And I think when we look back, we're going to see this year as a year in which people really sort of reconciled themselves to the circumstances that we all find ourselves in, and saying, you know what, if this is what it's going to be, then let's do the maximum that we can with regard to living our lives the way that we want to, taking into consideration the provisions that we might have to employ to ward off any kind of a challenge. So I think if you look back, you're going to see this year as one in which people sort of broke free of any of the concerns and some of the inhibitions and said, we're going for it. And hopefully that's reflected in the hospitality industry. I know that, that certainly was one that was severely impacted, by the very fact that, for example, we canceled a race. Believe me, the hotels at that time, were going through, considerable pain and suffering in that same context, right? And so it's a matter of rebuilding the faith, rebuilding the relationships, and making sure that people understand that we and you and any others in the hospitality are doing everything we can to provide a safe, secure, and yet friendly atmosphere for people to come back and engage.
I couldn't have said it any better, Jim. That's exactly what we had to do, and we had to think differently, and we had to be creative with how we approached, traditional service and traditional issues that we had to deal with, and also with the labor market changing dramatically. We had to reconsider our service offerings and how we continue to provide a high level of service, but perhaps with fewer people. People didn't want to come back to the hospitality industry to work. And so there were so many challenges over the last, it's unbelievable to say 3 years it feels like it was yesterday, but the last 3 years was a time for us to adapt and move forward. I think faster. I think we progressed fast. It sped up the progression of certain things that I think people were thinking about, but just didn't get around to actually executing. But now we had to, because the world demanded that we change, so it's been one heck of a ride, and it's been fun talking with you today and getting to know you a little bit better. And we really appreciate you sharing your insights and knowledge with our listeners. At the end of the show, we like to ask, what are 3 tips that you would like to leave our listeners with to take their career to the next level? But I think you kind of covered sort of it earlier. I just want to make sure we got it. Passion, and be, just come to work with passion and just have this energy to bring value to the organization, do what you do, and do it to the utmost is what I wrote down as well, was the words you said. Did that capture sort of your tips, or is there anything else you would like to add here before we sign off?
Oh, and thanks to Yamava for coming and joining us. We look forward to having a long relationship, and so many of the things that we talked about here today directly apply to how we can extend this partnership with with your organization. We're delighted to have you here. But again, just my advice to anybody that wants to be in this business, or quite frankly any business, is energy, passion, enthusiasm, engagement. Those are the things that will carry you much further than you can imagine in terms of your career or even your non-vocational aspects, because it creates the desire to do something that you really want to do. And when you have that as a motivating force, there's virtually nothing that's unachievable, because it all depends on what you want to do in terms of utilizing your life talents in whatever regard and whatever application it has. So I appreciate the opportunity, Peter, to come on. And again, we're delighted that we've created a partnership here, and I see nothing but expansive opportunities ahead, and we're looking forward to engaging again with your organization here over the next few months and seeing what the presence is going to be like when we run our race here in 2024.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the kind words, and we look forward to the future. And thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, Peter. It's been very enjoyable.
Check out more episodes on nextlevelcasinocareers.com.